Howdy, everybody. Welcome back. So, been thinking Dark Souls 1 is a truly groundbreaking game. It has so much depth, and there's so much weight to everything, to the sets, to the environment, to the weapons, to the enemies' attacks. The scale of the enemies is truly realized in Dark Souls 1. Whereas, in Dark Souls 2, everything is kind of big, but as easy to take down as the next big thing. There's genuine size and scale that is applied, and so things feel like they have weight, and it's especially evident in the weapons, and nothing is worse than the weight in Dark Souls 3 or Bloodborne. It takes me out of my immersion, and that's a little nerdy and a little autistic to say, and that's perfectly fine because, you want to immerse yourself when you're spending your time playing your video games. You don't want to waste your time thinking that it's just you want to concentrate that so you can spend as little time playing video games as possible to integrate that into a busy and active schedule where you're productive. And, I get the whole Dark Souls 3 is faster because people want to be on a quicker time scale or something like that, but if things are so fast that everything feels the same, and it's all just about leveling up like a JRPG instead of, being keenly aware of all the drawbacks of everything that you have, and if you want to go fast, finding a dagger or a rapier or a broken sword, and, cheaping it out like that. Or you could pick up the big hammer and, watch your character, stagger around when you miss. But I actually love Dark Souls 2 the most. That's my favorite. The sheer breadth of the entire project is immense, and it's beautiful. And there's, as Brendan, who's playing Dark Souls 2 right now on Twitch, you should check him out, said recently, every time somebody plays Dark Souls 2 for the first time, they play through a different way. Because there's just so many potentials where you go over here and you go over there and you go over there and you get lost because nobody's telling you what to do because they disassembled the world and put it back together after the dire programming issues came to light with the scale of their project, the scale of their hubris, if you will, and what the systems were capable of at the time. Scholar: The First Sin was released in a time when the systems weren't as dilapidated as the 360 for comparison, but it still has this broken apart and reassembled feel to it, which is fine. It was my favorite. There's so many cheap ways to die, so if you're playing with a friend and you pass off every single time that one of you dies, you always have the ability to get some time in without camping on it for too much. 3 is indeed fun, beautiful, interesting, but the entire reason why I've never played Sekiro, and I'm not all that interested in Elden Ring, is because it's just too fast, too slick, too low friction. I want to feel the weight in my medieval combat simulator. I don't want it just to feel like if I want speed and tactics, I'll go play Ace Combat 7 and have a great time blowing drones out of the sky. I made a lot of memories with friends in 2, and that's probably why I like it so much ultimately. A lot of people have so many complaints about 2, and I feel that. I understand that. But in my opinion, it has the most love, sheer stupid love, romantic love put into it, with all the things that the programmers and B Team thought that they could do and thought that they could pull off. And I love that. I'm shocked that Adam Toyota Corolla doesn't have more voice acting gigs. I will forever remember him as Spanky Ham from Drawn Together, and hardly anything else. He has a very distinct voice. He was on The Man Show, right? I'm pretty sure I watched that when I was very young. Oh man, which is a little aside that I gotta go into, which is the fact that Generation X has no place criticizing the younger generations. They fell for the porn, They fell for Hollywood. They fell for the drugs. They fell for every single manipulation and society disintegration tactic. They're not going to scapegoat their grandchildren, the ones that managed to survive after a majority of their children that were raised up without any sense became, problem children, and like 50% of my peers like killed themselves in one way or another, slow or fast. That's Generation X's fault, and the millennials are genuinely raising their children better in general. And so, like, it's so not the boomers. It's so not the boomers. I know that for a fact because it was downhill, yeah, but like the worst, one of the worst generations I've ever studied, the generation of Sodom and Gomorrah, is Generation X. Hollywood and California only look like that in the last 40 years. In California itself, it's kind of a collaborative project between very greedy boomers and ultimately a lot of like Vietnam vets coming back and being kind of messed up in the head and getting tricked into like joining the Hells Angels and stuff like that, and then that forming a whole counterculture to the culture, and then the police using this. I think it really started in California, and then it spread to New York, and then it metastasized throughout the rest of the country, where the police are just playing politics all the time. They have like people that they're in contact with constantly just doing fucking acting and chicanery to trick people and hoodwink people, especially older people. The big problem with boomers is that they're easy to trick these days, like anybody would be when they're very young or very old. And you see a lot of this chicanery being employed by various police departments and the theatrics that they like to employ, suckering in a lot of the boomers, but suckering in a lot of Gen X too. I feel very sad for the millennials that picked up the Gen X philosophy and culture, because it is the very thing eroding the ground underneath which we stand. A lot of the NASCAR slop came around about 1984. Car fast, brain turn off. Reagan, I think he was a very good guy, but his brain was legitimately like leaking out of his ears by the later parts of his presidency. And H.W. Bush, Yale Skull and Bones alumni and Grandmaster Freemason, nicknamed Moloch, would put on a bull head and chase people around with a boner at stag parties. That's what you get into when you get into Masonic parties and Masonic groups. He took advantage of poor Reagan and his dementia, and God only knows how much he had to do with inducing Reagan into dementia. Could have put something in the water. They had put something in the water in the Vatican to make people have heart attacks. This is interesting thing. John Paul I, who said he did not want to do the things that his masters told him to do, had such a horrendous heart attack that his face was like drawn back, super taut, like the face of exposed to chaos sort of shit. And it's a very gruesomely described death, and the woman that saw him and described him to the public also died of extremely mysterious circumstances. I've really seen a lot of Italian exceptionalism under the DeSantis governorship, and the creeps flooding into my backyard from all over the world, actually. That's the interesting thing about DeSantis, is that he seems to be connected to various groups all around the tropics and all around the Middle East, which a lot of politicians are, but DeSantis seems to care more about foreign entities, which is not to say foreign people, but countries like Israel, more than he cares about Florida, more than he cares about his own country. And what's interesting is this water used to be some of the best water. It used to be genuinely some of the best, folks. And since DeSantis got into power about 2 years ago, the water started tasting real bad. I've always been aware that, or at least I thought, that we did not have fluoride in the water here. Coming to find out, they actually did put it in here. They took it out recently, though. It's not just city folk flooding in. It's a deliberate, concerted effort to undermine the systems in effect, extract as much money out of things as possible, just like Warren Buffett did with the train that crashed and derailed at East Palestine. He could have replaced the brakes. Instead, he sold it out after riding it to the wheels literally were falling off, and then sold it, which is thievery. I don't approve of that behavior, not to your fellow man, because the long-term consequences are innocent people get hurt, not just the person that you sold the thing to. And so the company that bought it from Warren Buffett, they rode it to the wheels, literally fell off in East Palestine, likely trying to obliterate a Republican stronghold during a Democratic year to try and not just eliminate those voters, but intimidate their own base and the people in the middle like myself. I have a long track record of being a centrist, of being, most importantly, not swayed by either mainstream side, no matter how much they try to appeal to my personal hatred of my enemies, or my sensibilities, or my wanting of protection of innocent life and nature and things like that. Don't sign on to that. I've never signed on to that. And I think that's helped me achieve a more focused, narrowed view of the world, or excuse me, of my own politics, which is to say that it is very narrow, and allowed me to expand my horizons to other things. Study history, study art, study science, and guess what? You've been stuck in remedial racism. I'm in advanced placement racism! That's right, baby. My biggest regret from Kiwi Farms was calling a clarinet player Squidward. I finally figured it out. That's it. I could go crying about, oh, you kicked out Judge Holden for being funny and calling him a pornographer when he was just cracking jokes. But you're the one who shared Keffel's naked in chat and didn't tell anybody what it was, so they clicked the link and saw it. Like, nah, that don't sound good even if it did happen. That don't sound good on anybody, really. And I'm happy to see that Judge Holden finally made his way back in, but it's just like, where is this insanity? And where did it go? Who cares? Who cares, dude? I don't care if you were faking or if you genuinely let your website get taken down by 2 people. The issue is I watched your attitude turn into something real bad. And I don't care if you got pennies. I don't care if you got Franklins. It don't matter, man. Because what matters is in here. That's the shit that's gonna last forever, not this fucking dust. So find your spot in your swamp. Hunker down. Because legitimately, that black kid that shot up his school, that's a vast majority of the people that you've courted with this shit attitude. Whatever. I had a teacher in middle school, and I brought up harikiri. I had learned the term from an IFC movie, a black and white Japanese movie, and he screamed at me, "It's seppuku, idiot!" Which, seppuku just means slicing gut ritual, and harikiri means gut slice. It's that simple. He got copy in a pedo. That guy was my chemistry teacher, who was also the drama teacher in Edgewood Junior Senior High School, and that was my middle school. And yeah, I saw him in the news later, and he got caught being a pedo. Ain't that coincidental? You know, you gotta look out for the anime people. You gotta look out for the anime people. Like, Japan is great and all, but if you, as a European descendant, think that Japan is like way better, not just more intellectual, because we've explained how the Japanese mind is and how it manages to create itself into blocks that perfectly stack with its neighbors. That's a venerable thing you want to copy. But that, like, Japanese art is so great that like, I don't know, man. I'm not gonna put assumptions on people, but you gotta look out for those anime people, man. You gotta look out for those anime people. It's one thing you definitely learn when you spend enough time on the internet, is stay clear of a lot of those people. Find good shit that you like. Hey, if you like JoJo, fine. I don't really know how good or bad the later stuff is. I'm sure the art is real good, and I'm sure they don't like repeat shit all the time like a lot of cheaper animes like Naruto and stuff. But hey, man, if it's not offensive to the soul, if you're not seeing little kids being drawn deliberately in suggestive sexual ways, and you like the anime and it doesn't have that, go for it. You know, I'm not here to tell you exactly what to watch, what to do, but don't ever think that, oh, you know, that's fine, just tolerate it and then you get the cool stuff. That's just baking it um into your psyche that it's normal. Do not do that. And keep an eye out. You know, a lot of people are in fucking discords these days. A lot of people are in discords and these limited hangout groups where people are like mostly anonymous. And ooh, I have never signed up for Discord, and I will never sign up for Discord. That is a wolf tone promise. It's not happening. I'm never gonna go to anybody's Discord. In fact, the only reason why I can't contact a couple of friends is because I won't download Discord, and that's fine. They still wander around, and I see them every once in a while, and I don't need Discord to do so. I don't get black guys calling their women bitch. You know, 50% of that insult is used on guys, and it always means like dishonorable, cowardly, pathetic. It's it's not a slur of endearment, but you know, you hear faggot be used as a slur of endearment too, so. I guess it's more about the intention behind the word, right? There's no such real thing as a word of curse, but in fact just a crutch word that regardless of whether it's on a to say or to not say list, if you are using words as crutches, phrases as crutches, if you are falling back on your assumptive programming to try and fill the space in between your thoughts, you're actually strongly diminishing your own strength. It's like you're cheating during your exercises. And if you're inclined upward, then you can cheat a little bit, but it's just in general for your brain, for your philosophy, for your mentality, for the direction that you take in life. It is encouraged that you actually do not cheat, and you instead try to look far ahead and plan things out the proper way. And trust me, you will feel a lot better when you act like that, as opposed to trying to slip through things and then constantly remembering how you cut corners instead of, regardless of how hard it was, did things properly, and so learned the maximum amount and exercised the maximum amount that you could have in that situation. Oh look, foreign interference! Looks inside. Israel again! As much as the Novus Ordo anti-popes would have you think it's about brown people cleaning toilets, Christianity is actually about organizing around solutions to problems that might take multiple generations to actually achieve and show fruit for. It's about investing in the future. It's about not being short-sighted. And there's a lot of neo-pseudo-Christianity, just as there's a lot of neo-pseudo-paganism, just as there's a lot of neo-pseudo-science. And you can't fall for that shit. You know, you gotta apply it to history. You gotta apply it to the proper methodology. You can't just take some charismatic person, even though charisma is a venerable thing, at their word and just run in their direction just because they direct you there. That's exactly how you march into a mass grave. Don't do it. Strongly suggest researching Operation Gladio. Reading Gladio, the Vatican, and the CIA, that book, strongly suggested. It's wild how ADD and ADHD managed to pop up for the first time. No. Don't think that it's always been around. It really hasn't. Otherwise, it would have been reported in the history and the science. Our ancestors from 200 years ago aren't as stupid as the fucking TV will make you think. But ADD and ADHD managed to pop up right after governments discovered chemicals to make the perfect automaton super soldiers, methamphetamine. And you know what? They're only super soldiers if they take breaks and they do things in shifts, but they can't stay up for 10 days. And that is something that can take advantage of your enemies. But we live in the age of nukes, so they didn't put soldiers on that shit anymore. And instead, which is exactly, that's the shit that like the Japanese used to colonize super quickly all around the Pacific region, or the far Pacific region, I guess, in our case. So they found a way to make children long-term customers of these things. And whether or not the size of it was intended through the size of attention deficit issues was intended through petroleum companies that make petroleum-based food dyes that have been known since 1986 through genuine research and genuine science to cause attention deficit symptoms, or through the TV flashing things super quickly, which TikTok has taken and amplified, and then that goes on YouTube Shorts too, that goes on Facebook Reels too, that's all the same exact thing. That's like an amplified version of the TV flashing things in front of your face very, very quickly. I don't know what the scale of that is, or if it's just meant to make people weak, and then the people that have the capability to navigate that system are put on drugs so that they're on a leash that can be pulled at any time. I don't know. I don't know the intention of the evil of this society. I can only point to the contours and tell you the sharp points and say, look out for that. I've already stabbed myself. I got the scars to prove it. I've stabbed myself on those sharp points. Stay away from that. If you're dumb enough to think that Germany got double backstabbed by the entire world, and not the reality that the Nazis did not give a fuck about the long-term success of their grander amount of people, they did not give a fuck whether you want to blame this race or that race or this race or that race. The philosophy is that they did not give a fuck about Germany. They cared about this insane priestly caste going to Antarctica and going into Babylon and doing all this fuck shit, which they genuinely did with the Tibet shit and the anthroposophy shit and the theosophy shit, especially the theosophy shit. It's where they got the swastikas from the theosophical movements, flipping the shit from the sun symbol. And it's just like, they don't give a fuck. And people who venerate the Nazis don't give a fuck. And they're just flexing the fact that they do not give a fuck. And if you ever see seeds planted in a field and they're bearing the fruits of neo-Nazism, just know that that land is destined to be part of the 1/3. You know. I don't want it to be that way, but the way things are going, that's exactly how it's going. I'd rather it not be. But, yeah. It would be very funny if the Earth literally goes into another ice age because we cut, every time actually, because we cut down all the trees, and it has been for a million years. Just forcing everybody back into Africa to regroup, and Yakub's like, again? Because there's the theories about when the polar ice cap melts, it injects a bunch of cold water into deep water ocean current, which slows the ocean. That slows the ability for warm water to heat things up. Could also have something to do with the locking in of the air currents around the North Arctic and how it starts to flow downwards and freeze everything out. It could be a natural balancing system. It could be going on for hundreds of thousands of years. I've always suspected that the Egyptian culture is particularly old and storied and has like so much more depth than a lot of the stuff we find around, which is like 6,000 to 20,000 years old. And the Egyptian culture feels like it could be close to like 1,000,000 years old. Like if you look at the roots of it. And Gabon has likely been populated by people for hominids for 2 million years. Homo sapiens for 2 million years, hominids for 3 million years. And I've always wondered how you get these Neanderthal radiations that then get caught up to by other much more different hominids, and it could just be that the environment gets really wrecked in a particular area, and then we reset. Now that's just a theory I just came up with out of whole cloth. I doubt that reset theory, where like a lot of the world's floods happened again and again and again, and that's why we can trace like 7 major global floods. I don't know how that all went. I just know that the world is incredibly old and has a lot of stories in it, and God knows these stories. You say God works in mysterious ways, then assume everything. Me. I think God's ways make perfect sense. And I'm constantly in awe of the grandeur and complexity of it all. No offense. I don't think it's genetic, really. Kids grow up watching their parents indulge in schadenfreude and vicarious sadism and then melt into legionary automatons trying to impress their parents. I think that's where a lot of it comes from. But everybody needs to get more clicky. That's going to solve all of our problems. That's totally not been the problem. You know, hate all the right people too. Don't learn from them. Don't fix your behavior to not become the people you hate. Indulge your hubris. If you hate the right people and you get more clicky and you narrow things in to the point where you only know what's in your immediate vicinity, that's totally going to make you not cattle to be herded by Talmudic fucking psychopaths. And you know what? The Talmudists actually have a lot of venerability compared to the Zohanists. Or the Zoharists. I guess there's a movie called the I don't give a shit. Hollywood sucks. It's something that you giggle at when you're a kid, but if you fucking can't grow up out of that shit, you're a piece of garbage. Garbage human being. You probably never entertained anybody. It'd be very, very funny, though, if Hollywood just completely dissolves. I'd love that. Like, AI and what people think that they can do with it, but they can't actually achieve, like, does the whole Elon Musk thing of bait and switching, like, the CGI, AI stuff, and then getting the money for the investment, and then just running away with the bag, and that just deletes Hollywood. That would be great. I don't feel bad at all. I don't feel bad at all for the fucking workers in Hollywood that clean the toilets in Hollywood. Fuck that. Like, I care. Like, I do actually care about the janitor at Epstein Island because he was one of the biggest informants for the general public, not just the police. And he ended up getting killed. But yeah, Hollywood, that can evaporate for all I give a shit. That's the one good thing coming out of the Newsom governance. Oh. Well, give Yakub my regards. Take care, everybody. Hope you have a good one.